The condo was my refuge, a sleek cocoon of glass and cream leather nestled in a quiet suburb where the world couldn't touch me. After a day of wrangling suppliers for my boutique, endless calls, a shipment of silk scarves delayed again, I needed something just for me. The living room glowed soft under the amber hum of a floor lamp, its light pooling on the hardwood floor. A faint lavender scent drifted from the candle flickering on the mantel, mingling with the crisp night air slipping through a cracked window. I kicked off my heels, letting them tumble by the ottoman, and sank into the sofa, the cool leather kissing my bare legs beneath my silk robe. I reached for the Pinot Noir on the glass coffee table, the bottle's deep red catching the light as I poured a generous glass. The first sip warmed my throat, loosening the knot of the day. My laptop sat waiting, its screen a blank promise. I pulled it onto my lap, the metal cool against my thighs, and scrolled through the streaming site. Work had left me hollow, and tonight I craved an escape, something to stir the parts of me I'd buried since John passed. My fingers hovered over the keys, then typed La Nuit Douce. A friend had mentioned it over lunch last week, calling it elegant passion, not cheap thrills. I wasn't one for anything too raw, but the idea of something tasteful, something that whispered instead of shouted, pulled me in. I clicked play. The screen bloomed with soft light, a woman's fingers tracing the edge of a velvet curtain, the fabric rippling like water under moonlight. Her breath was audible, a faint sigh in French, and the camera lingered as her hand drifted lower, brushing the curve of her hip. My chest fluttered, a warmth spreading through me like the wine settling in my veins. I leaned back, the sofa cradling me, and let myself sink into it. This was harmless, I told myself, a private indulgence after years of playing the poised widow. My skin tingled as the scene unfolded, the woman's lover stepping into frame, his shadow tall and deliberate. Their hands met, a slow graze of fingertips, and the tension crackled even through the screen. My breath came quicker, a quiet ache blooming low in my belly. I shifted, crossing my legs, the silk of my robe sliding against my thighs. I was lost in it. The way her eyes, sharp and knowing, locked with his across the dim room, the way the light caught the sweat on his collarbone. My lips parted, a flush creeping up my neck. It felt good to feel this again, to let the walls I'd built crumble just for a moment. Then I heard it, a faint creak, the groan of the front door's hinges. My heart slammed into my throat, my body freezing as the door swung open. Lucas stood there, his broad frame filling the doorway, gym bag slung over one shoulder. The hall light haloed his messy dark hair, still damp from a shower at the gym. His eyes, sharp like his father's, widened as they flicked from me to the screen, then back again. The soft moans from the laptop hung in the air, a damning whisper I couldn't silence fast enough. My hand shot out, fumbling to snap the laptop shut, but it was too late. The sound lingered. The scene burned into the space between us. "Grace?" His voice cut through the silence, sharp and low, like a blade. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out, just a dry rasp as my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. My cheeks burned, the heat spilling down my neck, my chest tightening until I could barely breathe. He stepped forward, the bag slipping to the floor with a dull thud. His gaze locked on me. Confusion twisted his features, then something harder. Disbelief, maybe anger. I could feel it, the weight of his stare pinning me to the sofa. "Lucas, it's just a movie," I stammered, my voice trembling like a leaf caught in the wind. My hands clutched the edge of my robe, pulling it tighter, as if that could shield me from the moment. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, his jaw tightening as he processed what he'd walked into. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of lavender and my own mortification. "What is this?" he asked, his tone sharper now, slicing through the haze of my panic. I couldn't look at him. My eyes dropped to the coffee table, the wine glass trembling in my grip. "It's nothing," I managed, barely a whisper. "Just something I was watching." He took a step back, his sneakers scuffing the floor, and I caught the flicker in his eyes. Shock, yes, but something else too. Something I couldn't name. Then he turned, the door clicking shut behind him with a force that rattled the frame. I sat there, frozen, the laptop's dark screen staring back at me like an accusation. The warmth I'd felt moments ago was gone, replaced by a cold, gnawing shame that settled deep in my bones. The kitchen glowed soft in the morning light, sunlight spilling through the tall windows and painting golden streaks across the granite island. I stood at the counter, the sharp scent of coffee brewing in the air, a lifeline I clung to after a night of restless tossing. My hands moved mechanically, slicing an orange, the juice stinging a nick on my thumb from yesterday's chaos at the boutique. The fruit's bright flesh split under the blade, but my mind was elsewhere, trapped in the echo of last night's door slamming shut, Lucas's shadow disappearing down the hall. I wore a loose sweater now, the silk robe banished to the laundry, as if shedding it could erase what he'd seen. I spread the orange slices on a plate next to buttered toast, my fingers trembling as I arranged them. The clock on the wall ticked past 8:15, each second a hammer against my nerves. Lucas would be up soon. My stomach churned, a sour twist that no amount of coffee could settle. I poured a mug, the steam curling up to warm my face, but it did nothing for the cold knot in my chest. The floor creaked in the hallway, and my body tensed, the mug nearly slipping from my grip. He appeared in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space, gray hoodie pulled up over his tousled hair, joggers hanging loose on his hips. His jaw was set, his eyes fixed on the floor as he shuffled to the coffee machine. "Good morning," I said, my voice softer than I meant, laced with a plea I couldn't hide. He didn't answer, just poured coffee into a mug with slow, deliberate movements, the liquid sloshing faintly against the ceramic. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, pressing against my ribs until I couldn't stand it. "Lucas, about last night," I started, my voice wavering, a crack in the calm I'd tried to build. He turned sharply, his eyes meeting mine for the first time, hard and glinting like steel. My breath caught, guilt stabbing through me as I saw the accusation there. "Let's not," he cut in, his tone slicing through the air, sharp enough to make me flinch. He took a sip of coffee, his hand steady, but I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his knuckles whitened around the mug. I set the knife down, my palms damp against the cool granite, and took a deep breath, forcing the words out. "I know what you saw, and I get why you're upset. But I'm human, Lucas. I have needs, desires, things I don't usually let you see." The words hung there, heavy, almost tangible in the quiet. His expression shifted, a flicker of something, confusion, maybe anger, crossing his face. He set the mug down with a thud, the sound jolting me. "You're my stepmom," he said, his voice low, thick with emotion. "You're not supposed to, I don't know, act like that." My chest tightened, his honesty cutting deeper than I'd expected. I stepped toward him, my hands outstretched, vulnerable, trembling. "I know it's hard to see me that way. I'm still Grace, the one who helped you with college apps, who made you pancakes on Sundays. But I'm also a woman. I'm not perfect, Lucas. I have moments of weakness." His eyes narrowed, his jaw clenching as he processed my words. "Weakness?" he said, his voice rising slightly. "Is that what you call it, watching that kind of stuff where anyone could walk in?" I winced, shame flooding my cheeks, hot and prickling. "It wasn't like that. I thought I was alone. I didn't expect you to come in." He scoffed, running a hand through his hair, the strands falling back into his eyes. "Yeah, well, you should have locked the door." The words stung, sharp and true, but I forced myself to stay steady, stepping closer, my voice soft but firm. "You're right. I should have." "I'm sorry for that, but I'm not sorry for being human, for needing something just for me, even if it's messy or imperfect." He looked away, his gaze dropping to the floor, the silence heavy again, charged with something unspoken. I could see the conflict in him, the way his shoulders hunched slightly, like he was wrestling with the image of me he'd always known and the woman he'd glimpsed last night. Then he spoke, his voice quieter, almost hesitant. "If you're so comfortable with it, why not watch one together later? After dinner?" My breath caught, my heart slamming against my ribs. The words sank in slow, their weight pressing down on me. "Lucas, I started, my voice trembling, but he met my gaze, his expression unreadable, steady. "You said it's normal, right? So why not?" My mind raced, the room shrinking around me, the sunlight too bright, the coffee too bitter on my tongue. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. He turned, picking up his mug, and headed for the living room. "Think about it," he said over his shoulder, casual, like he hadn't just dropped a match into the dry grass of my world. I stood there, rooted, the orange peel curling on the counter, my pulse a wild drumbeat in my ears. The kitchen smelled of garlic and thyme, the oven's warmth seeping into the air as I slid a tray of roasted potatoes inside. I stood at the island, chopping carrots, the knife's rhythm steady, but my mind a tangle of thorns. Lucas's words from this morning looped through my head, casual yet heavy, like a stone dropped into still water. I'd opened a bottle of Merlot on impulse, its dark ruby glint catching the pendant lights above. The first glass had steadied my hands, but now, as the clock ticked toward 7:30, my stomach twisted, the blade slipping against a carrot's edge. He'd be home soon. The front door clicked open and I jumped, the knife clattering to the counter. Footsteps echoed down the hall, and Lucas appeared in the doorway, gym bag slung over his shoulder, his hair damp with sweat. He glanced at me, brief and unreadable, then dropped the bag by the wall. "Dinner's almost ready," I said, my voice soft but firm, trying to anchor myself. He nodded, moving to the sink to wash his hands, the water splashing against the steel basin. "Smells good," he muttered, drying his hands on a towel, his eyes still avoiding mine. We moved around each other in silence, the air thick, pressing against my skin. I pulled the chicken from the oven, the golden skin crackling faintly, and set it on the table with the potatoes and carrots. My hands trembled as I arranged the plates, the clink of ceramic loud in the quiet. Lucas poured himself water, his movements slow, deliberate, like he was measuring every second. We sat, the scrape of chairs against the floor jarring. I took small bites, the food tasteless, my stomach knotted tight. His gaze flicked to me now and then, lingering a moment before darting away, and I felt it. His eyes tracing the curve of my neck, the way my sweater hugged my shoulders. The silence gnawed at me until I couldn't bear it. "How was your day?" I asked, my voice breaking the stillness like a pebble in a pond. He shrugged, stabbing a piece of chicken with his fork. "Fine." His tone was flat, but his eyes met mine for a second, sharp and searching. I nodded, my throat tight, and glanced at the Merlot. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was exactly what we needed. "Want some wine?" I asked, gesturing to the bottle. He hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." I poured, the liquid glugging softly into the glasses, and handed one to him. Our fingers brushed, a fleeting jolt that sent a shiver up my arm. We clinked glasses, the sound hollow, and I took a sip, the wine's richness spreading through me, loosening the tension in my chest. Lucas drank quickly, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed, then refilled his glass almost immediately. By the time we finished eating, the bottle was half gone, and the air between us had shifted. Less brittle, more alive, like a current humming beneath the surface. I cleared the table, my movements slower now, the wine warming my limbs. Lucas stood, stretching his arms overhead, his hoodie riding up to reveal a sliver of his stomach, taut, tanned, a faint line of hair trailing downward. My eyes lingered, caught by the way the light hit his skin, and a flush crept up my neck. I turned away, stacking plates in the sink, but I felt his gaze on me, steady and warm. "So, Grace," he said, his voice casual, cutting through the quiet, "we doing this movie thing?" My heart skipped, the plate slipping in my hands before I caught it. I turned to face him, my mind racing, the air suddenly too thin. "Doing what?" I asked, though I knew, my voice barely steady. He raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Watching a movie, like we talked about." My pulse quickened, my palms damp as I nodded slowly, the words slipping out before I could stop it. "Okay." We moved to the living room, the soft glow of the floor lamp casting warm shadows across the walls. Lucas grabbed the remote and sank into the sofa, his long legs sprawling out. I sat beside him, close enough to feel the heat of him, my body tense, my mind a storm of nerves, and something darker, something I couldn't name. The wine buzzed in my veins, softening the edges of my fear. He pulled up the streaming site, the screen lighting up with rows of thumbnails, bold colors, suggestive titles. My cheeks burned as I glanced at him, but he just scrolled, his expression calm, focused. "What are you in the mood for?" he asked, his tone light, like we were picking a comedy or a western. I swallowed, my throat dry. "I don't know, something tasteful." He chuckled, a low sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "Tasteful, huh?" His fingers moved over the remote, categories flashing by. Romantic, sensual, forbidden. My breath hitched as he paused on one, his eyes flicking to me, teasing. "This work?" I nodded, unable to speak, my skin prickling as he clicked play. The screen went dark, then flared to life, and the room filled with the soft hum of the laptop fan. I felt him shift beside me, his arm brushing mine, and the tension coiled tighter, a thread pulled taut, ready to snap. The living room was a cocoon of shadow and light, the floor lamp's amber glow pooling around us as we sat on the sofa, the laptop's screen casting a faint flicker across our faces. Lucas's arm rested on the cushion behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, his cologne, a sharp, woody scent, mixing with the lingering time from dinner. My heart thudded as he scrolled through the streaming site, thumbnails flashing by, tempted hearts, family secrets. He stopped on Stepmother's Desire, the image of a woman in lace, her eyes half-lidded, staring out at us. "This one?" he asked, his voice low, almost playful. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak, and he clicked play. The screen darkened, then bloomed with soft light, a woman's silhouette against a window, her robe slipping to reveal the curve of her shoulder. The sound was hushed, a whisper in French, and my skin prickled as the camera lingered on her hands, tracing the air like she was reaching for something she couldn't have. I shifted, the leather creaking beneath me, my sweater suddenly too warm. Lucas leaned back, his arm brushing my shoulder, and a jolt shot through me, sharp and electric. My breath quickened as the scene unfolded. Her lover stepping closer, their fingers grazing, the tension thick enough to taste. The wine still hummed in my veins, blurring the edges of my nerves, and I glanced at Lucas from the corner of my eye. His gaze was fixed on the screen, but his breathing had shifted, a little faster, a little deeper. The woman's hands moved now, trailing over her lover's chest, and I felt that same ache stir in me, low and insistent. I crossed my legs, the friction sending a shiver up my spine, and Lucas shifted too, his knee brushing mine for a heartbeat before he pulled back. The air between us crackled, heavy with something unspoken, something I couldn't ignore. "You're into this, huh?" I said, my voice low, teasing, slipping out before I could stop it. His head snapped toward me, eyes wide for a moment, caught off guard. Then a smirk tugged at his lips, faint but real. "Maybe I'm just curious," he said, leaning slightly closer, his tone a challenge. "You?" My pulse raced, my body thrumming as I met his gaze, those sharp eyes glinting in the dim light. "Maybe," I murmured, my lips curling into a smile I couldn't hold back. I leaned back, mirroring his posture, my shoulder brushing his arm again, the contact lingering this time. On the screen, the woman whispered something, her breath visible in the cool air, and her lover's hands settled on her waist. I felt Lucas's fingers twitch against the cushion, inches from my neck, and my skin tingled where I imagined his touch. "What if we tried it?" I said, the words trembling as they left me, soft but deliberate. His breath caught, his eyes locking onto mine, searching, probing. "Tried what?" he asked, his voice rougher now, like he already knew. "Like them," I said, nodding toward the screen, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. The woman's robe fell now, pooling at her feet, and the camera lingered on the curve of her back. Lucas exhaled sharply, his gaze flicking to the screen, then back to me, darker, hungrier. "You serious, Grace?" he asked, his tone low, testing the water. I nodded, my palms damp, my body alive with a mix of fear and want. "Yeah," I whispered, barely audible over the laptop's hum. He shifted closer, his knee pressing against mine this time, deliberate, steady. His hand moved, hesitant at first, then settled on my arm, his fingers warm through my sweater. "Like this?" he asked, his voice hoarse, his touch sending a shiver down my spine. I nodded again, my breath hitching as his hand slid up, grazing my shoulder, then resting there, firm but gentle. The screen flashed to the lover's face, his jaw tight with desire, and Lucas leaned in, his breath warm against my neck. "You're gorgeous," he murmured, the words soft, almost reverent. My heart skipped, a flush creeping up my cheeks as I turned to him, our faces inches apart. "I've wanted this," I whispered, my voice trembling, echoing the woman on screen as her lips brushed her lover's ear. Lucas's breath hitched, his hand tightening on my shoulder before sliding down my arm, his fingers brushing the curve of my waist. The tension snapped, the air thick with it, and I felt myself lean into him, drawn by the heat radiating from his body. The scene shifted, her hands running through his hair, their bodies pressing closer. And I glanced at Lucas, my pulse a wild drumbeat. "What if we just tried?" I said again, softer. My lips so close to his I could feel his breath. His eyes widened, then darkened, his chest rising and falling faster. He didn't speak, just leaned in, his lips brushing mine in a tentative kiss, light as a feather but enough to set my skin on fire. I responded, instinctive, my lips moving against his, slow and deliberate, tasting the faint salt of his skin. The kiss deepened, his hand sliding to my waist, pulling me closer as I pressed against him, my fingers tangling in the soft fabric of his hoodie, his breath hitched, his grip tightening, and the heat between us flared, urgent but restrained. I pulled back just enough to look at him, his eyes locked on mine, wide and searching. "You sure?" he asked, his voice a rough whisper, his thumb tracing a circle on my side. I nodded, my throat tight, my body thrumming with a need I couldn't deny. "I'm sure," he exhaled, sharp and shaky, and leaned in again, his lips finding my neck this time, grazing the skin just below my ear. A shiver ran through me, my hands sliding up his arms, feeling the muscle beneath the fabric. The laptop hummed on, forgotten now, the woman's soft moans fading into the background as the room filled with the sound of our breathing, quick and uneven. His fingers brushed the hem of my sweater, hesitant, waiting, and I felt the line we'd edged toward start to blur, the pull too strong to resist. The bedroom was a shadowed haven, moonlight slipping through the blinds in thin silver streaks, painting the walls with a quiet glow. Lucas led me in, his hand firm on my waist, guiding me through the dim hall as my heart pounded a wild rhythm against my ribs. The door clicked shut behind us, the sound sharp in the stillness, and the space felt smaller, the air thick with the scent of his cologne and the faint musk of anticipation. The bed loomed ahead, sheets tangled from my restless night, but he didn't steer me there, not yet. Instead, he turned me gently, my back to him, his hands resting light on my shoulders. "Hold on," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. I heard a soft rustle, then felt something smooth and cool slip over my eyes. A silk scarf, one I'd left draped over the dresser days ago. He tied it gently, the darkness swallowing the room, sharpening every sound, every touch. My pulse raced, my breath shallow as I reached up, fingers brushing the fabric. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling, but there was no fear, just a thrill humming through me. "Trust me," he whispered, his hands sliding to my hips, steadying me as I swayed slightly, disoriented by the blindfold. I heard him move, the faint creak of the floorboards under his weight, the soft thud of his shoes hitting the ground as he kicked them off. Then his hands were back, warm and sure, trailing up my arms, his fingertips grazing my skin through the sweater. My breath hitched, my body leaning into his touch as he stepped closer, his chest brushing my back. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice low, reverent, his lips grazing my neck just below the scarf. A shiver ran through me, my skin prickling as his teeth grazed the sensitive spot there, light but deliberate. My hands reached back, finding his arms, feeling the strength beneath his hoodie. "I've never wanted anyone like this," I whispered, the words slipping out, raw and unguarded. His grip tightened on my hips, pulling me against him, and I felt the hard line of him pressing into me, the sensation sending a jolt of heat through my core. My knees weakened, but he held me steady, his breath quickening against my skin. He turned me slowly, his hands guiding me until I faced him, the blindfold keeping him a mystery I could only feel. His fingers brushed the hem of my sweater, lifting it inch by inch, the cool air kissing my stomach as he pulled it over my head. I heard it hit the floor, a soft thud, and then his hands were on me again, tracing the curve of my waist, the edge of my bra. "Can I?" he asked, his voice rough with need, his fingers hovering at the clasp. I nodded, a faint tremble in my breath, and he fumbled for a moment before the fabric loosened, falling away. The air felt sharp against my bare skin, and I heard his breath catch, a low sound that sent a flush creeping up my chest. "You're perfect," he murmured, his hands sliding up my sides, warm and tentative, then bolder as they cupped me gently. My head tipped back, a soft gasp escaping as his thumbs brushed over me, igniting a fire that spread fast. I reached for him, my fingers finding the edge of his hoodie, tugging it up. "Let me," I said, my voice husky, and he lifted his arms, letting me pull it off. The fabric rustled as it fell, and my hands explored him. Broad shoulders, the faint trail of hair down his chest, the rapid thud of his heart under my palm. He exhaled sharply, his hands settling on my hips again, pulling me closer until our bodies pressed together, skin to skin. The heat of him was overwhelming, the hardness of him unmistakable against my thigh, and my body responded, arching into him before I could think. His lips found my neck again, trailing down to my collarbone, his teeth grazing just enough to make me shiver. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer as the tension coiled tighter, a need I couldn't name taking over. "I need you," he whispered, his voice raw, his hands gripping me like he was afraid I'd slip away. I nodded, blind and breathless, my hands sliding down his chest, brushing the waistband of his joggers. "Can I?" I asked, my voice barely audible, trembling with the weight of it. He swallowed hard, a faint nod I felt more than saw, and my fingers moved, undoing the tie, pushing the fabric down. The rustle of cloth was loud in the quiet, and I felt him tense as I brushed against him, the heat of him searing my fingertips. A faint gasp escaped me as I took him in, hard, trembling with need, and my hands moved instinctively, tentative at first, then surer, wrapping around him. He groaned, low and rough, his hands tightening on my shoulders as he leaned into my touch. "Grace," he muttered, his voice strained, "this feels incredible." My pulse raced, my lips finding his neck, brushing the skin there as I whispered, "You're so perfect." The words slipped out, unguarded, and his hand slid down my back, fumbling with the clasp of my jeans, his breath ragged. "Let me," he said, and I nodded, my body thrumming as he worked them open, pushing them down with a tremble in his fingers. The cool air hit my legs, and I stepped out closer to him, the space between us gone. His hands roamed, tracing my hips, my thighs, pulling me against him until the heat of us was unbearable. Our lips met again, deeper this time, urgent, his tongue brushing mine in a way that sent a shiver through me. I pressed closer, the hardness of him against me driving that ache deeper, but something held me back. The weight of who we were, the line we'd crossed. He sensed it, pulling back just enough, his breath ragged as he searched my face, or where my face would be behind the scarf. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice hoarse, his hand still on me, warm and steady. I nodded, a soft yes, all I could manage, and he exhaled, sharp and shaky, his lips finding mine again as we stumbled toward the bed, the world narrowing to just us, the moonlight and the fire we couldn't put out.